Hey everybody, Michael McGinnis here with the Ripple Effect. Today's topic, well, we've been talking about spirituality, spiritualism, our paths here, and then generally speaking, the topic is really what are some of the challenges associated with this spiritual path? As you develop it, what can happen that you can struggle and challenge with? And Tom's going to start off today with I think a topic we could all relate to, really relating to money and spirituality. So without further ado, Tom, here we go.
Cool. I've mentioned this before. I grew up in a Baptist family. My dad was a Baptist minister, and in back in the 50s, I was born in 46. So back in the early 50s or so, my family would struggle because we lived in a parsonage near the church, and I'm I have no idea what he made, but it couldn't be much. And I recall him talking about in seminary when he and my mom were, uh, in Louisville, Kentucky, where I was born. Their first Thanksgiving together at seminary, and what that was like. And basically, he said that I think they had some kind of table and a couple of little boxes or something to sit on, and they opened up a can of pork and beans, and that was their Thanksgiving. And he said that was the best Thanksgiving meal they ever had. I mean, they've had many since then, just in terms of what it would meant to them to be where they were, doing what they were doing, and to be able to have a place to sit down and to have a can of pork and beans to eat. Um, just that he remembers that and always thinks back on that, or did. They've both deceased now, but on what that was like for them, and the value of, um, not so much what you have, but what it means to you, and so forth. So, and growing up in with the family, then we didn't have a lot, but we had the church and we had the parsonage to live in, and so that was always an interesting thing because when I would look around at some of my friends, it would be like, well, we're doing so and so, and we're going on this vacation, and we're doing that, and so forth and so on. With that's nice, and always in the background, kind of feeling left out, in some form or fashion or another. But we didn't. It didn't feel like we were poor in our family in growing up. I mean, I never really felt like I was less than somebody else because of that. But I think that was my parents, again, the valuing what we do have. And of course, um, this thing about that was he was a minister, and ministers aren't supposed to make a lot of money, you know. So I mean, you're there to serve other people. So there was that kind of value built into my experience. So when I started then becoming, on my own and starting to work and so forth, and getting into all the spiritual, um, practices, and at some point I think I mentioned that I went to a psychic fair in New England, and so there was a fee, for that. You these 15-minute, 20-minute readings or something like that, and you get a fee for that and a charge for that and so forth. And I always felt funny about it. It's like, this is a spiritual gift, and am I supposed to make money doing that? There was always a contradiction in myself, and partially because I guess my upbringing, that we're not supposed to be thinking about what the monetary value is of what we do. We're supposed to be of service and help people. So I struggled with that for, a while, because at some point or another I was, um, self-employed and wanted to do classes, with some of the things that I was learning, and I always struggled with how much am I going to charge. What's the fee for that? And I would look around what other people were charging. Well, that's, man, that's a lot of money. Um, so it's it continues to today to be a somewhat of a struggle. I mean, I think I've worked through it for the most part. I've kind of coming around and come back to where it's okay, because people seem to value what you're doing. And in order to do what you're doing, you need at least to be healthy. you know, you need to have enough resources to support yourself. Um, and nobody else seems to mind. And then when I look around at some of the mega churches and how much money they're pulling in, and we used to watch, occasionally watch the Sunday television programs when some of the famous, I won't mention any names, but you know, when some of the famous TV personalities were doing their Sunday programs and then asking for donations and money would roll in. Um, and then you would hear about how they were buying jet planes to get around and they were buying expensive cars and big houses. And that was supposed to be a sign of God's grace on your work. That God was blessing you somehow or another, and that if you're doing the right thing, you'll be blessed. And then I look around all these other people that are doing the right thing and they're living in squalor. Well, what are they not good enough? How is it that these people are raking in the money, and is that a sign that they're somehow better, than other people? They're worth more. So I see a lot of misuse of that, the whole issue of making money, to the point of um, doing it under the guise of spirituality, as opposed, to. It always challenges me somehow or another. Um, so I would like to open up the exploration about, the value of your work. I mean, I know if you're doing a class, that's a little different than doing the healing. I know that Dan, when we do our ordinations, there was no charge for the ordination. The ordination itself is free. And that was a struggle for Dan in the early days when it started becoming clear that he was traveling all over the country, um, going to all these places and standing there for hours and hours and hours, and there was no charge for that. Well, okay, wait a minute, something's not working right here. And he struggled with that at the beginning or at some point, and trying to figure out, well, how can I make a living? This is my work. I'm going. He was devoting, a chunk of his life to going out regularly and routinely to do these ordinations and having a class, and then it's a love offering and people give whatever they do, but it wasn't always adding up. Wasn't always working for him. So at some point, I guess having the class or the ordination class was the way to have an income to be able to pay. The ordinations is still free and so forth, but the class is costing you something. Um, so that's where my thoughts were to start out with. Just explore what is the value of spirituality and offering your gifts in a healing. Um, I feel uncomfortable offering it for healing per se, offering money, but then doctors make a lot of money healing, basically. So is it okay? Is it okay to make money that way?
Boy, I I don't know. I've never, for myself, I've never charged for a healing,
Hmm.
uh, but it's but I've never had never tried to make a personal business out of it.
Hmm.
It's just it's something that's happening in a church or something that's happening at a conference or something. You just join in and there it is. Um, but the I've seen people promote books, how to increase your spiritual business.
Hmm.
It leaves me with a question. What are they really doing here? I don't have an answer for it. I just uh, left questioning. For me, for when I know I'm going to get offered money for something I'm going to do, like I've gone places and given talks and something, uh, it it bothers me to take the money, but it makes sense to accept something, to not to tell them no, 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 go away. I won't accept your thank you. You know,
Hmm.
it's never been enough to change my life. um, nothing would last more than a week. So it's,
Well, I know Tom went through that. I mean, he would do
yeah,
these all-nighters and these talks and go someplace, and Elaine would fuss at him, because he was taking their money. He had his own stash of money that he would use for these things, but it was his money. He would pay to go to these. He would get paid, and if somebody offered him money, it's usually, well, just for the transportation or something, and he didn't want to opt to accept money for his talks. And
yeah. He got into a little bit of trouble sometimes, and he'd go off to do something. They, like the military would pick him up, haul him off somewhere. He'd come back with an extra $1,000 in his pocket, and then tell me, "Come on, we got to go. We got to go out to lunch. I got to get rid of this money." Oh, geez.
Great conversation. And Tom, thanks for really bringing it up, because I think we're all relating, as myself included. And for me, you know, I'm not sure I can address the question. I can address why I feel that way, and some thoughts of which I've applied to this. But it clearly represents one of the challenges associated with spirituality, because you're operating more from that center of love. And for me, I grew up, and all you have to do is grow up in a society like ours, and you can see the importance that we put upon money and on these other factors, right? These other external factors that really, as we can come to see, are really less important than the importance that other people play on or are attached to them. And then it's that misuse and abuse, right? So money, a clear form of power, and a means to allow people who have money to get out of, situations that they're guilty of, right? Or, you know, um,
yeah, yeah,
get a free ticket, out just because they're able to pay for all of these resources and things. And I know for me, one of the things that I mean, so in witnessing that I sort of had that feeling as I was coming in spirituality, like anybody at first was, oh yeah, going out and working. It was about growing in your career. And when people are asked, what's really important, it's earning more money, right? We immediately, for most people, put that concept of money right up on top of everything. But as I started to pursue spirituality, for me, it was earlier on when I started to backpack and travel overseas. And there I'd be exposed to and involved in situations that would be highly traumatic, of struggle, great pain and suffering, areas like in the South Africa with the apartheid, what they call the townships, or the
mm,
ghetto kind of places. But what I love the stories, because the story there is meeting with an individual there who turned out to be the security guard who was able to bring me around and introduce me to people, of which I then learned about the life within these townships, which was just utter challenging to sit there and hear the stories. And so naturally there was that outcome. But the other thing that became very clear, and this would be consistent now with my travels and experiences, is that these people had no money. They would be poor by any American standard. In fact, poor in an American standard would be wealthy, for
hmm,
them, right? Is what we
hmm,
call lower
hmm.
class, whatever. There was no earnings, right? There was nothing. There was just access to sheer just basics in life. But yet, my experience there is that these were the happiest people I'd ever met. And not having anything was everything to them. And even though there was this aspiration, it would be nice to have things, but I never would hear even that in the conversations from them. Oh, we're missing this, we're a victim kind of thing. It never came up. And it floored me as I spent time with them, how they managed to survive. And it reminded me of Viktor Frankl in his book, Meaning of Man, I think it is, his life in the concentration camp and how he survived based on his attitude. And this was really what I found there. And so there was no aspiration for this being rich and wealthy. It was clearly a Western concept and nothing that really even came to their minds. But yet, at the same time, was this incredible happiness that was there. So those were the experiences up front that I really had a chance to disassociate our perception here that happiness is making more money or happiness is related to more money. So I did start to connotate is spiritual is okay to have no money or less money here. But like you, Tom, said, is that we need money here, right? Is we need to exist. Yes, as Tom said even at one point, let's go to the worst case, like when I was worried about a change and something in my life, and he goes, okay, worst case, worst case, worst case, and I'd be homeless. And he goes, okay, so then what? Right? Well, then homeless, even back then, had food, had shelter of some form, right? To be able to go to. And so it helped me again realize, we don't have this importance on money. And with that, I came back with this great aspiration. I remember I was just so pumped and motivated that I wanted to go and help other people. So I would attempt to try to put together these little businesses. One of them was called the Wilderness Adventures, which is, I love camping. So I would go out there and want to offer camping trips for people who were on the spiritual path to just really sit around the campfires at night, take trails, like walks into nature, and really just have this chance to really just collectively talk about it, sort of resembling like some of the trips we did with the priesthood, right? You'd go and have that day and sit around at night and have this great sense of connection and collaboration with other. Well, I put money in advertising. I did everything else there. Zero, zero, zero work with it. Well, okay. Well, then for me came along this real people pushing me as they heard my story. You got to write a book, write a book, and so I did, and that's the Discovering Michael book. And so I even had a publisher write it, and so publisher is the one who makes 99 cents on the dollar. I'm okay with that. Just to have that published was a great feat for me on it, and it's read, it goes through, but again, I think last year's, the most I made in a royalty thing was maybe $12 or something in a year. Right. And so that meant it was good. A couple hundred books were sold, but based on the what I would get, and so it was okay. How do I make something work? And even the work we're doing here, right, is all, some of it is there is this aspiration. It'd be right. It would be nice. It's not the intention. It's not the purpose, but it would be nice. It would be certainly nice. It would certainly help out financially. Um, but yet, it's not evolved that way. And then, Richard, you talked about it. There's a lot of philosophies today. As you said, people are offering books on, making it with spiritual businesses or whatever. And then there's also I listen a lot to Abraham Hicks. Great, she has a series on YouTube, and say it's somebody who's talking through somebody else. And I like it. I think there's a lot of great value to it, but a lot of the focus there is really the whole concept of attracting in, particularly money is a very common one, relationships and money. And it's there and it seems very much there, but I like it. I enjoy hearing it. I've applied some of the concepts that are there. And but yet I would say too is this sort of a challenge I face when listening to it. I enjoy it, but is it really all about money? I've just never come to that conclusion in my life. And I don't think I ever will. but yeah, it's there, and it's something that is important as far as paying for the basics. So I share that not as an answer, but just really as the set of circumstances, experiences I went through sort of form an opinion on it. Is that people like Mother Teresa and others that are out there, Tom Sawyer and them, it was never about money. It was the intentions. I like that. I like that, Christmas. I have, when people have offered money, I very often, in some cases, say no, because the intention is coming just from me. And then I would sit there and think about, oh, it would be nice to have $20, or something for that. So I guess I don't know the answer. I just know the struggle that relates to it. And I know some of the reasons that I just shared related to the struggle, but I don't know the answer. But what I do feel that I know is that it's very common amongst many of those who are on a spiritual path with a true intention of really developing their sense of inner self, is that these external resources on the outside, materialism and money and things, don't have same value, don't have very little value except for the basics. And I don't know how to make that piece work uh, with respect to getting it done outside of the Abraham Hicks philosophy or and her series there, which is very spiritual in nature. And it clearly, I recognize it is as somebody true ability to come through a person and talk through this and share some, what I've felt to be very much truths. And so to me, that's a good philosophy there. I can practice it somewhat. Something to consider is what I would share to people with it. Maybe something I should go back and review a little bit more, but it's hard for me to put a high value on it. That's, I think, what holds me back.
Yeah. I think part of it has, if somebody dedicates their life to promoting something, promoting a spiritual truth, promoting a healing process, promoting wisdom, promoting information, and so forth and so on. I think, I mean, I've come to the conclusion now in myself, it's okay to have make a living, because if that's what you're doing full time, you got to live,
Yeah.
and you need to live reasonably. That doesn't mean you have to charge, thousands and thousands of dollars and make excess income. Um, but I suppose that's, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that per se, if you're rewarded for the work you do. I mean, I think it's okay to be rewarded for what you do, and to value yourself. And part of it has to do with self value, whether you value what you're doing or whether you see the value of what you're doing. And that was part of what I had to struggle with, is what I'm doing worth something,
Mm.
self-worth. I know Kara talked about art at one point, and we have talked a little bit about how she might use her art um, to do certain kinds of artwork that's going to be more sellable. Um, and artists, I think, struggle with this a lot too. Is It's not just a spiritual issue, but a creative issue. Um, if you enjoy painting swirls of color, and that makes you satisfied and it's beautiful, but nobody's buying it, do you stop painting swirls of color and paint squares of brown and black, and just because that's what's selling? And then, are you satisfied? Are you feeling good within yourself, and you want to do that day in and day out, paint a bunch of squares with black and red and orange colors and just put those out just because you're making a living? And after a while, feel like you're selling your soul, or you're selling yourself. You're not really doing what you love doing. And so that's a dilemma to some extent that artists often go through. I know in the Santa Claus work, Richard, I'm sure you've probably experienced this too. Um, Santa Claus, I mean, there are plenty of people that go to the hospital, and I've done this, and I'm sure you've done this. Nobody's expecting to get paid for that.
Right.
You go to help somebody and to bring that that to them. But on the other hand, I'm doing programs where I'm there for so many hours a day, doing stories and music and with the Santa Cares Project. And at first, I had to struggle with, well, wait a minute, should I be getting paid for this? And it became clear to me after a certain point that yes, people, they want to do that, and
Yeah.
there's an expectation that you're doing an art form, or that you're doing you're presenting something that has value. And so I had to, over the years, had to evolve into to what that value is, you know. And because when I look at how much Santa Clauses make in New York City, as I'm sure you have, you can live for the whole year on what they make in what, 6 weeks,
Yep.
5 weeks, whatever.
Yep.
85, $100,000, $200,000, whatever it is that they're. I mean, amazing amount of money just for sitting in a space, just doing the traditional Santa Claus thing, much less doing the stories and the books and all the stuff that I do. So I've had to really look at, well, now maybe I should just pack it up, go to New York for 6 weeks, come back. I don't have to work the rest of the year. I don't do anything else now.
Right.
I mean, that's what is that okay? Would that be okay for me to do that?
The what comes to mind is what this discussion came up in one of Tom's talks. Someone was asking similar question, and his comment was that the struggle is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
That you're constant trying to figure out what you are really doing this for, and is it appropriate, is the answer right now for where we are. Once we become, honestly, truly become unconditionally loving, then we'll know. But right up until that moment, the struggle and wondering is the appropriate thing to do. And if so, it becomes a self-honesty thing. Is someone telling themselves, "Oh yeah, 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 I'm really wondering about this," while they're raking in money from the mega church, um, to Santa's, like, even here, at the mall, it's $15 an hour. But if you go and do a half hour for a private party, it's $150.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wait a minute, it just doesn't seem to fit, you know. And I have not tried to make a Santa business,
Right.
but I get asked to fill in. I get asked to show up, and it's what they're going to pay. I
It's
let
an
it be.
expectation, of what it is.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
any work
But
that you do, I mean,
yeah,
you know,
but for my own peace of mind, I'm not chasing it.
mm-hmm.
'Cause there's guys who are just constantly busy through the whole season with parties and whatnot, and they rake in a lot of money, enough to mess up their social security for the. I'm
Yeah.
nowhere near that, but I'm happy. I'm okay with it. I do enough. I reach enough kids, uh, and and what I end up with is satisfactory. Um, it would bother me to move to New York City and make 100 grand.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't want to. I mean, it costs 100 grand to live for 6 weeks in New York City, probably.
Right, exactly.
I really like, Richard, what you said, because the answer is in the struggle, and I think that's a great truism of spirituality, right? Is that is the nature of so many things that you will encounter, and it's a good way to find ourselves of looking at it. Because I know, I mentioned the book, but to the publisher's credit, they said that this, hey, you've just climbed Mount Everest with respect to mountain work and effort ahead just to get to publishing, 5 major rewrites, blah blah blah. 5+ years, in terms of it, it had to be a passion of love, and they were upfront. Now you've just got a mountain twice the size of Mount Everest, because if you really want to make this grow, you've got to be out there talking about it, and it's what you just said, Richard, is I'm not the kind of person to chase, to kind of go create that work. It's not, I don't feel it's me to have to go, because I'd have to wear basically a marketing hat and go out and promote me. And it's just never been me in that way out there. And that's, the way you make more money for the most part, is in taking that action, the moving to New York City or whatever. And I think that's, and Richard, you also said something that I really would characterize true for me is at the end of the day, I'm happy. And
Yeah.
that's there's so many people out there with money that are not, and or they think that that's the solution, and I hear and see stories
Right.
of that all of the time, to the point of which I'd rather have that scenario of being happy, and so that seems to be characteristic of the life, and that's the benefit of, for me, that struggle. But it's the kind of thing that this session has just helped to remind me is it's always important to put it in perspective. At the end of the day, am I getting by? Yes. Am I happy? Yes. And so,
Done. All good to
what's
go.
yes. Oh, what's the challenge? Right. And then I guess it's too, and maybe it's the stories I like to listen to. You hear of, like, for what's his name, the money guy that um, uh, he lives up northeast. He's oh gosh, forget his name. He's always been one of the richest people, and there's the big stock fund and things, that revolves around him, whatever. But anyways, he's never made life about money. He'll talk about it as the richest person. He just ended up donating, and I'm sorry, I'm not thinking of his name right now. Warren Buffett. So his name has always
Oh,
been at the top of the charts for richest, wealthiest people. But really interesting, because as you get to know him, and there's a lot of great documentaries and videos on him, he still lives in the same home he grew up with. He drives around old cars. He refuses to get a new car. And he says, he goes, no, people ask me about that all of the time. Why don't you, you're fully capable of living in a wealthy kind of thing. Why don't you? And he goes, for me, it was never about money. He goes, I enjoy making money, and I'm really good at, but I don't need it to change my life. I'm very happy with my current life. And he ended up just recently uh, donating the vast majority of the billions that he has over to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
yeah.
Just help, right? Just boom. In fact, there was even the documentary of which is kids. The kids, he had one sum of money, or $50,000 or something. And they said the rest of it is your life. He goes, you've got to want to do is here's what it is. So people thinking, oh, they were going to get inherent millions. No, it's not the case, kind of thing too. And the kids were really fine with that, which again is very unusual to think about. But I think about those kinds of stories that are those inspiration, and seeing what Tom did, seeing what Dan did, and knowing how many people that helped. I can be. However, Tom, I mean, it's right. There's part of it is um, if you're at a point where, as you said, you've dedicated a lot of time, devotion to this in the work, that should be a remuneration, because that's what it takes to sort of help carry through life on that. But yet to figure a way between that point A and point B on that one, I don't know if I could answer it, because I'm sure a lot of people could with respect to traditional work. Well, go get a business plan, invest in so and so, sit down and do this, and then go out there and do all of this kind of steps, which is what it usually takes and is usually suggested when somebody starts a business. Well, that's real. That's there, and that's a process that's typically used to do that. There are free resources such as the Small Business Administration and SCORE. I forget what it stands for, but they're retired individuals that really just help people for no charge up front to sort of formulate business ideas and to get together. So there are resources out there to be able to do it, and that's what I would be suggesting to anybody I know, wanting to try to start a business. But I've never tried to apply it for myself. Um, in the way of the book or the different business kind of viewpoints I had to try to go do that. And so that's sort of my own dichotomy, right? I'm not following my own recommendation to others, but at the same time, I really don't. And at the end of the day, I'm making ends meet. So I'm very fortunate. I feel really fortunate about that. So sorry, I'm no help, but I can really much relate to the issue.
I think that value, enters in here. So what is the value of a person's life? What is the value of a service? What is the value of a thing or a place? What is the value of these different segments of our life, and what do we value? You know, how do we value our time? Even with Tom, I know there was a point that we saw him begin to accept money and think, well, he had to come to the realization that at some point it's costing him to go and do these things, and that's taking away from his family. That's
Right.
taking away, that's not fair to his wife and to the family for him to go spend money for these things, even though he did it not because to make money, but if he's going to spend money and energy to get there, he started being okay with receiving money, certainly for transportation, and then certainly at some point for remuneration for the time, because he was taking time away from something else that had value. So he had to equate the value of his service with the value of himself and his family, and then find a balance there. I think in our society, of course, we have so much struggle about people who don't have enough, um, at least by the standard that we're talking about. Like you mentioned, Mike, that these people in that live in that village, they never struggled with the money part of that. They might have struggled with other stuff, but they didn't seem unhappy about not having money. You know, I mean, they had resources, and resources. We live in a country where we're blessed to have resources, and it's unimaginable for somebody to starve in America, and yet there are people that do. And I'm not sure whether that's just their inability to ask for help, or if it's society not seeing that that's happening and people being too embarrassed because there's such a stigma on making money. If you're poor, you don't want people to know it a lot of times. Some people are very shy about letting the other people know that, look, I'm struggling here. What can I do? I need help. Um, so asking for help is sometimes a hard thing, and we shouldn't have any. I mean, look at if you go online, somebody puts a little thing on a GoFundMe thing, and thousands of dollars rake in, more than they need. You know, I mean, people are. It's amazing sometimes. I think, well, I'll just do a GoFundMe thing if I need something done. Because there are millions and millions of people out there who tune into these things and say, "Well, I want to help that person. I see that, that plight, and I've got a few dollars, and if you add a few dollars over a million people, that adds up." So I think our values in general in our society and what we value is really complex. And for
I
somebody
like
like Warren, you know, go ahead.
I like what you said. You done? I'll try. I'm trying to be polite, but I want to get this in too.
Yeah.
I like what you said about value and how Tom came to understand a sense of value. And for individuals, Tom knew where he was, but for each of us or anyone who might listen to this, the two or three people we have following here, the thing is to once you've established what the value is uh, for whatever community you're doing this in, whatever the population is, then you have to consider, why am I doing it? Am I doing it for that money? Am I doing it for the honesty of giving? And that's the value that just is a peripheral, natural part of the thing? Or is my own internal desire for the money? That's the struggle in trying to discern within yourself, why are you really doing this? Like I get, you made the swirls, the painting with all the swirls and colors, and you sold one for $2, and then you did one with brown and black squares, and it sold for 300. Uh, exactly.
So I'll go home and do all my swirls, all I want to, and then in the next hour, I'm going to make a whole bunch of squares and sell
Yep.
those, and then go
Yep.
back and do my circles, and and I'll be
Yep.
happy. It's finding a balance
Right.
between
Exactly.
that. What the value. If you love what you're doing and you make money at it, I think that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody needs to feel guilty about making money. If they love what they're doing and it has value
Yeah.
for someone else and they value it enough to pay you because they see it's valuable. Sometimes, and I've heard this said before, that sometimes people want, if you don't accept somebody's gift, you're denying them their gift.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask. Uh, there's a couple of things that have happened to me in the past couple of weeks that I wanted to go over. Have we finished with this? Have we got where we need to go?
I think
Or is
we've gotten them all the value out of this that we
Yeah, we've gotten the struggle.
we're whistling into the ground?
Yes, here we are. So, well, for the rest, we'll close it off by putting this video on GoFundMe.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes, and say there'll be more. There'll be more if we could just get. But it's a great topic, and we will turn over now, Richard, to take it in a different direction. And I think it's something too, as I was hearing the conversation, is it's interesting because so much of for many of us, sort of our target audience are people who are either interested or on the spiritual path, who are probably experiencing the same struggle and have come to this same awareness and conclusion, that aren't probably the most wealthiest people in America, I would presume, and I could be totally wrong with that assumption. And yet there are some of those, the few that clearly have great names or big names, big following, Wayne Dyer and things like that too did, but he was, again, genuine person. But I don't know how the difference is where he generated probably lots of money from his books and other things too, and myself. But I'll remain in the struggle for right now. Yeah. So Richard, take it.
Yeah. The thing that I really questioned was a friend of mine who's also a performer. And I honestly, I haven't seen him for many years, but friends on Facebook. And he had a lot of personal struggles during throughout this past year, along with losing his income and close family members dying. And I'm trying to make this as vague as possible, but still getting stuff in there if he happens to ever hear it. Um, and I really became concerned for him, deeply concerned, during a few of his Facebook posts. This is normally a very upbeat, creative, energizing person, but this just seemed to suck the life out of him. This living alone, not performing at all, and losing family members. It was a lot for anyone to handle, and was extremely difficult for this guy. When he's not performing, he's a quiet, sensitive person. I became extremely concerned for him with a couple of posts that he made, and I wanted to. Uh, I was left with a desire, not even well thought out, just feeling the desire to somehow be of help to him. And that night, as I'm in my dream state, I dreamed that he was some distance from me at, and out in the water. So I started to approach him, and he moved away. So I got in a boat to approach him, and he got in a faster boat. So I got in a faster boat, and we kept upgrading speeds, and he was just so the sense of he wasn't really trying to get away from me as much as he was caught in where he was. And the imagery was all this boat stuff. The imagery that my brain turned this into was all this boat stuff. But at some point, he went beyond some hidden shoals under the water that you had to very carefully pick your way through or it'd rip the bottom out of your boat. And then I made somehow he stopped after that underwater um, jagged rocks and whatnot. And I caught up to him, and all the imagery of the boats and everything went away, and there was a sense of a transfer of some kind. If there was an imagery of boats at that time, it would be like my boat refueling his boat. There wasn't that imagery, but that would fit the previous imagery. And it became just a very beyond comfortable, warm place to be. That it felt like here's two people very much at ease while this transfer of some kind is occurring. I woke up and was very aware of the dream and how it all transpired and all the imagery of it and whatnot. And thought, well, it didn't think much about it, just, had a dream and there it is. Well, that morning, his, his very next post on Facebook was completely different than everything that had gone the year before. He had tons of creative energy. Uh, he sounded bright, cheerful, happy, ready to go to work at whatever he could find, rather than being in that incredibly dark, low spot. He was way up here and just sparkling. I hesitate. I hesitate to accept I did that. So I question it. Was that a real thing? And I don't have someone with Tom's sensitivity here to ask because Tom would not only know the truth of it, but be able to say something uh, very wise and spiritual about it that would lead on to. I don't know anybody like that now. So I'm talking to you guys. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, um, I think this relates in a sense to this idea that I mentioned maybe last time about being at the Berlin Wall
Yeah.
and whether or not what we did made a difference, or
Yep.
whether that was a part of, you know, whether we caused the Berlin Wall to come down. Of course not, because the people who were there, the movement that was already in existence, is what the freedom, the sense of freedom and desire to break those walls down was what caused that. But certainly, I think the influence that you might question you if you didn't do that, what would have happened? You know, if you the next day you would have read his thing and he had been still in that state of um, dismay or distraught
Yep.
and so
Yep.
forth, you wouldn't know. You say, oh, he hasn't made it. He's still in a bad space, and you wouldn't know that you've even tried to do anything.
Right.
I think that just the energy that we have does have an effect. I think we determined that, and we don't have to take credit for anything, uh, but it is sometimes a feedback for us, and I think that's helpful. That we get feedback from what we do,
Yeah.
and that's part of the ripple. If you can look at it on the long term, you can see the ripple effect of what you did. Well, okay, I think we do all kinds of things every day that we never even have a dream about or we never even imagine.
Yeah.
And that has a ripple effect, and you might save somebody's life without ever knowing it. And I think every now and then it's good for us to get an acknowledgement or to get an affirmation that this is good to do, that you're a
Yeah.
good person and you're offering this. So that's what I would say.
Right.
Tom, outstanding response. In fact, I think you had the Tom in common with Tom Sawyer there, as you were right on target there. That's good. And Richard, I was going to offer you the answer to, but it would cost you $25.
The check's in the mail.
It's that all? It's way worth more than that. Come on, Mike. Come on,
Is that the value of your advice?
Oh yeah. No, never mind. I'll do it for free.
That's the value of your advice.
There we go. Yes. But I really, Tom, I love you said it, and I was talking before with Richard, and there are certain things to me how I discern more so today, amongst a lot of just people's thoughts or opinion or whatever is if I feel a resonation, and I'd have a tough time describing that other than it resonates like an energy kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I feel like we were talking about that before, and what you just said really, really resonated with me because I think that is a great response to it. First of all, I look back at the dream, and even before the dream is what was there, your intention, right, Richard? It was
Yeah.
your intention to help,
Yeah.
right? And the intention, goes way back to the favorite parts of the movie Razor's Edge is when it was Bill Murray was asked the questions, he goes, no, that was the answer. He goes, what's your intention? And it was on the boat wanting to wash the dishes or something, and he said, well, I'm clean the dishes. No, he goes, what's your intention? And that's a much deeper aspect of self, something that takes a fair degree of self-awareness and consciousness, I think, to really get in touch with it. But that consciousness is really powerful because that is an energy, that is a thought. And it's interesting because as you shared the dream, I kept hearing you approaching this person with this and based on this intention, desire to help, but he was just continuing to move away. And it was interesting because in my life, my experience on that, as well as my own challenges in life, I realized that a person has to want to be helped, first, right? In order to do that. And so as you were moving, and the other one is moving away, clearly the intention or interest on that person's part is not to come back, to turn, to defer. It was to move farther and farther away. And very often you see that when people are so much in their pain and agony that they stay with it. In fact, it was a great movie. I forget the name of it. To Robin Williams, his wife had died and gone in, and he wanted to try to go save her from the I think she killed herself from the despair she was in. Very interesting.
What things may come.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Very good. And it's interesting because, here it was before, and that sort of describes, Robin Williams' own life, right? So I mean, I think he really did that from his own experience. But what was the concern there? He kept the desire, the motivation was going in there, but the challenge was losing himself, right? To all of the negativity and things that were around him, and from what I recall in that dream, and I forgot what the outcome of it was, but to me. Your outcome sort of was the outcome is the intention was there, and he had found a place from navigating out through these different shoals and things, as you had mentioned, to come to some place of to receive something. And in there, to me, was this sense is as you then just described what his Facebook was like, here was this chance of this transfer of this real love and passion that you had, and maybe not interested in that when we're in pain and suffering. I know I don't want people around who are love and suffering. I want misery loves company at those times, right? And so we look for more misery, um, and he didn't do that. But I like what Tom said is that what's really important to me along the way is that sense of some confirmation. And I remember learning that
Mhm.
at one of the conferences to ask for a confirmation, that this idea or this thought really meant something. And I'll never forget that experience because it was in Geneseo. And there was this, and I said, "So what do you ask for?" And never had heard of that concept before. And so in my mind, I did is okay, all right, I will. I got this thought. This is somebody, this thought, this thing here would really help represent the confirmation for this. And I'm not saying it because it's sort of unfolding the story. And so all of a sudden at the conference, end of the conference, saying goodbyes and everything, and he goes, "Hey, here, this is other person I just had met during the conference. Didn't even, I think we shared a few words back and forth with each other." And he threw me a red ball, a little red ball. Guess what my mind was that thing was a red ball.
Mm,
And
mhm,
so
mhm.
that really, I like, it blew me away. Frankly, it was so much immersed in. I mean, it was the whole concept of the spirituality and conferences was new to me. And so here was this confirmation I had asked for. Very difficult to write that off to coincidence or anything else, right? But it was something there. And then I had used it several times in my life. And there is a value because, as much as me asking, did I make an impact, is a degree of ego, it is who we are. And in this
Mhm.
human element, it's part
Yeah,
of who we are. And so sometimes we just do like to know that this is making a difference to sort of keep fueling that side of ourselves here too. So I think it is a great example of the Berlin Wall is that your intention was there. And that night you were gifted because was that something that you had drafted up before going to sleep? That you had written down, right? To be on a boat, be doing this there. No, right? And I mean, you would probably say, no, that was, I didn't make that up, or at least consciously make that up in my awake hours. And here was this experience, and here was this confirmation in a way to just say, Richard, your intention was outstanding, and it did have an
yeah,
impact.
because your friend really made the change. You didn't
Yeah.
make it for him. He made the change, and
Well, yeah.
the juxtaposition of your intention and his receptivity is what came together there.
Yes.
So it's it's a relationship. I mean, we're all in relationship with each other, and so my intention and your receptivity come together at key moments. And that confirmation is that I need to keep connecting with people or I need to be receptive to people. And so when we get that confirmation, it encourages us to keep making those connections.
Yeah. I I approached a lot of spiritual stuff with a lot of skepticism, going, "Oh yeah, people can really do that," you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I questioned within myself, was I actually involved in some kind of energy transfer to him? And I totally forgot about asking for confirmation about that. I would like to be able to trust that it was a real event and it's like thereby under I don't know how the words, like it's like is I want to say understand something for the future, that
Mhm.
something like that not only did happen but is available. If all the stars line up, the intention and receptivity line up, is that something you can trust can happen? Not that
It,
I'm going to make it happen,
yeah.
but if it comes around again, can I feel more secure in that it was an actual event?
Well, I absolutely trust it, and because I mean I can think of that one instance I've mentioned some time before about the walkie-talkie in the back of the car,
Yeah,
and picking that up at the right time to hear the conversation that was going on, and to knowing then that I was supposed to pull over and avoid a head-on car crash. I mean,
right.
that to me is so profound and striking and clear example of how synchronicity works, and that these synchronicities is it's synchronizing with a, the larger self, that we're all one. And so in a sense, the oneness in your friend and the oneness in you synchronized, and that's not, out of the, it's not out of the ordinary, really. We
Yeah,
synchronize all the time. It's just a lot of times, in his case, he was pushing away.
yeah.
you know he wasn't synchronizing. He was pulling back, but for some reason or another, either because of your continuing to pursue, you got a bigger boat, right?
Yeah.
You kept going. You didn't say, well, he doesn't want me.
It was the imagery in my mind was my willingness to pick my way through those shoals is what convinced him to wait.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'd like to point out that as you've been answering me, you've been gaining a halo.
Oh yeah, I know the sun is shining in here. Ooh.
Woo!
A confirmation. It is.
That's
It's a
somebody needed that confirmation.
confirmation. Yes, for me it's still $25 when I see that.
I think it ought to go up. I think we're working our way up here.
Right?
Oh,
He wants to double
I
what he made on his book.
I think this is this incredible value. You brought up this whole thing with value and related to topic of money, and this is the value I think of is just this conversation here, right? You know, the benefit of us connecting here is the value of our connection, right? Being able to share these things because all of a sudden things makes more sense. Whereas if I'm sitting just back by myself, as you would be, Richard, and thinking about that event, I am on my things, Tom is on his things. It's always great to be able to just be able to share what people can appreciate, understand, and with no judgment, really be able to listen. And that's the real value here. And that's the message I hope gets out is the motivation for the ripple effect is that if you're out there, and on the spiritual path and feeling like so many of us alone at times, that's part of the purpose here is to be able to connect and share. You hear not a lot, thoughts, ideas, impressions, not here to answer questions, but to
Yeah,
just,
you
be a
could join
resource for each
join
other.
in with us, and we'll help you with giving you perspective. There may be
Yes.
somebody who really doesn't have a friend that they can recognize, that they can talk to about this stuff. And that was one of the problems that we had early on in this journey, that many of us didn't have people that we could talk to.
Right.
And so when we got together at the priesthood gatherings or at the conferences, there were all these people that, wow, these are people that I can talk about this stuff with and not think I'm crazy. So there could be somebody out there that has a feeling that something they want to explore, and we're low key enough that we can listen to you and not judge you, and
That's
reflect.
impressive right there.
It is. It
Yeah,
really is. Yeah, and I'd say too is and mention the word Tom Sawyer, and you'll get a 50% discount. And it'll only be $12.50 for you.
Oh, no, we doubled
No,
it.
oh, we
Now
doubled it.
it's 50 and it's 25 now. So
So mention the word
we're
Tom
back to
Williams.
25 again.
Mention the word Tom Williams, and I'll charge you double.
We'll always get our minimum, whatever that is. We'll just keep charging more and giving discounts.
That's
Oh.
the minimum level of spiritual glue. 25 bucks.
And I'll give you a shoestring to go along with it. Here. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh man, this shoestring is too big. Oh,
No.
Yours is white, mine's black. What's wrong with this?
White one. I can do magic with mine.
Oh, these few moments.
Where's yours, Mike? You're not wearing shoes today? What is going on here?
No, actually,
You're the barefoot prophet. Oh, look at that. You're ready to go get in the ocean, I can tell.
Oh, right. Where else? This is great. I think these the last few moments of humor, really fantastic. Hey, by the way, I'll just quick share something for those, you know, as ourselves and other things too, is I thought about this here. Am I sharing it here? Can you see the screen here?
Yes.
Just, you know, I really impressed this, you know, we, I think all have that degree of BS meter, you know, that we apply to things. And I started listening to Abraham Hicks on has YouTube videos, there's her own site and stuff that's here. But it's, you know, it's this whole current law of attraction. And, you know, after a while, it took me a few times to sort of just push myself to listen, because I had that hesitancy here. But then over time and hearing the message, it really was there's a lot of pureness to it. So in effect, over time, my discernment started to really open up to it. And one of the things that she really said is that it's all energy. And she utilizes the term vortex, is the idea that in our vortex, which is our spiritual bucket of rewards, rewards is not the right word to use there, but of everything that we want there. And, you know, her approach is to really to just be able to connect with this vortex, and it's all energy based. So we have to be at that energy of what's the vortex for us to be able to receive it. And so the best way to be able to get to that energy is manage your emotions, watch your emotions. So, you know, if you're feeling, I'll never get that, this and that, she uses the analogy, okay, you're paddling upstream. So that's going to take a lot more energy to sort of get there, right? So the goal is paddle, turn the boat around, just go with the flow, go with the current. How is that? Hey, you know what? Find something you're happy about right now. You know, what is it that you're feeling good about, and focus on those things. And more you raise your level of energy. And I can say that I've played with it enough to just sort of say that there's definitely some testimonials I would give to that. Have I put it to this big financial test or anything like that too? And even just using the word test to me is sort of a, you know, I'm not applying the right thought or energy towards that, you know, but it is a tool and something to just consider for those that are out there. Very interesting. This woman here, Esther Hicks, you know, discovered a long time ago that she just channels this entity, Abraham. And it's fabulous just seeing and hearing the talks and hearing how fast it occurs and what comes out. And it's been very tied into a lot of my other real spiritual beliefs, not just this whole idea of money, which is how it can tend to come across at first because that's what a lot of people are there for. But then it's a deeper than that. So anyway, I just share that, you know, as a consideration for people to really consider for those who are thinking about attracting more things into their life of who they are and what they want. And so my experience so far is it's leading towards more and more confirmation than it is not a truism.
Okay.
So yes, good. That's an advertisement. I wondered if I could charge her.
At least $25, you know.
Now it's kind of up to 50 now. I said
Oh,
that's
see how many people have been watching this? $1 a person? You know,
yes. Said
we're
yes.
halfway there.
Spend $1 now to 555-1212. This offer will not be repeated till next time.
That's right.
Oh,
Oh, guys, as always, really awesome. Thanks so much, and thanks, Tom, for really starting off sharing it. I'm sure, you know, again, that's in for impromptu things. There's other topics I can clearly think of, you know, that all sort of fit into this challenge, right, of being spiritual today and dealing with some of the challenges we face. And Richard, thanks for opening up yourself up in that experience, because I'm sure, and I know, you know, how many people have these kinds of things and want to understand, you know, am I intuitive or write it off, right? And I think we are so much more there that we can tend to shut these things down. But of course, then there's the others who are just fully so egotistical about this that they sort of ruin it for the rest of us, right? Because, you know, but it's somewhere, the answer is somewhere in between, as I think it always is in spiritual matters. So, but Tom, your answer, and again, it does remind me of what you shared with the Berlin Wall. Is, you know, that happened and you came back and you got that confirmation. I think it was Tom, right? Tom Sawyer said something, you know, again, and trusting him. That's all somebody would have to say. So Tom said that, yes, because I
yes.
really agree.
One of the many confirmations from Tom Sawyer over the years that he would say something either in private or even in public sometimes, you would know that he was talking to you.
Yeah.
And that would be a confirmation of these things.
But
So
I think
Richard, he's still around, just a different form. And for $25, I'd be happy to channel Tom anytime you like. Is that okay, Tom? Yeah, he says it's okay.
I've channeled Tom myself. Mostly it comes through like this.
Yep.
Yes. Into this brain duster.
Oh,
yes. Oh, that's great. Well, now we have each other, and so that's with all of us channeling Tom in different ways. We're bound to get it right one of these times.
A part of him still is here. That's right. In each of us.
Yes. Spot on. Truly the ripple effect. All right, guys. Until next time. Fantastic. Thanks a million. This was awesome.